Welcome to Meet the Candidates. My name's Eric Crump. I'm with the Homewood Flossmoor Chronicle. Today we're talking with former Congressman Jesse Jackson Jr. about his run for the 2nd District. Welcome to Meet the Candidates.
Eric, it's a pleasure to be back.
Okay, I thought first we ought to delve into the manner in which you departed the 2nd District when your term ended. You served from 1995 to 2012 and resigned, citing health issues, subsequently pled guilty to 1 count of wire and mail fraud. I'm sure that you're dealing with this issue on the campaign trail, voters wondering what you learned from that experience, how it may change how you approach your campaign this time. And I mean, the basic question is, should we trust you? And what do you respond to people who have those kinds of questions?
Well, trust is something that you have to earn. And in 2012, it was a very difficult period and a difficult cycle in my life. When I was elected in 1995, I came to this job bright-eyed and bushy-tailed with hopes and expectations of being able to change the world, only to realize that leaving the 2nd Congressional District and working in Washington, 2 children came along the way. I saw Washington D.C. as living as a business expense. I'm here in Washington not because I want to be, but because I live here to go to work on behalf of the people of the South Suburbs. Significant mistakes were made over the course of that campaign and those campaigns over a 10-year period. I accepted responsibility for my behavior. I paid my debt to society, paid complete restitution, and I've been out of public life for 13 years. I received a call one day from Congressman Bobby Rush, who recognized that Danny Davis was retiring, that he was retiring, that Luis Gutierrez and Chewy, I believe, were considering retiring at the time. And he was profoundly concerned about the 2nd Congressional District and about leadership from the state of Illinois in the Congress. Very young, very enthusiastic, but without the history and without the experience. If reelected to Congress, I regained 17 years of experience, making me the longest serving member of Congress, Democrat or Republican in the Congress, from Illinois. That's important. I won't be a backbencher. Number 2, I brought more than $980 million to the people of the 2nd Congressional District. I have experience. I know how to respond to the needs of the district. New metro stations from 43rd Street in Hyde Park all the way to 93rd Street. Fresh water in Ford Heights, a retention pond. Responsible for naming the Pullman National Park. My legislation created that and changed the dynamics of 111th Street, 115th Street, the Bishop Ford Freeway. And there's a number of unfinished tasks that matter to the economic growth and development of the district that are particularly important to me. But above all else, Congressman Rush stressed upon me the timing. That the congressman shared with me that Donald Trump is quite a different figure in American history, and that the people need a champion, they need a fighter. And he said it was hard to imagine of the candidates that were vying for the position before I entered this race on October 8th, that any of them brought the imprimatur or brought the cachet to the race, to the country, not only to the district, but for national leadership for such a time and an hour as this. I took approximately 5 months of thoughtful reflection, traveling to Tilton, Illinois, Westville, Illinois, Danville, Illinois, the wards in the city of Chicago, met with many mayors in the South Suburbs, and made the judgment that if the people would have me and give me a chance, I would certainly use this campaign to articulate the highest and best possible issues that matter to them.
Can we pause there for a second? And I know that, and you've mentioned a lot of your accomplishments in your first tenure in the 2nd District, but of course times have changed. As you know, we have a completely different leadership and different direction for the country. What are your top policy priorities should you be elected this time?
Well, what I know is that Harvey's insolvent this time. It wasn't insolvent when I ran in 1995. I know that at least 6 other communities in the Southland are heading in the direction of insolvency. That most of the job growth and development still occurs on the north side of Chicago and the northwest suburbs. That through Governors Edgar, Ryan, Blagojevich, and Quinn, I led through leadership the purchase of 4,000 acres of land for an inaugural airport, either passenger, cargo, or a combination of both passenger and cargo. The entire footprint has been assembled to build one 10,000-foot Code F runway, giving our district access to the global economy for the first time, meaning nonstop to Hong Kong, nonstop to Beijing, nonstop to Frankfurt, Germany, nonstop to Johannesburg, South Africa. Our communities need that access. 11,000 construction jobs, 15,000 permanent jobs on opening day. And all it requires is Governor J.B. Pritzker to transfer the land to the municipalities that I worked with 13 years ago and organized them into a commission for the purposes of beginning construction of that project. That's the way we lower property taxes when the burden is shared with more businesses. That is the reason and the way in which we fund public schools, by sharing the burden with more businesses. And I'm the only candidate in this race that, one, has a plan to build the airport. We provided it to the state. The state has followed our plan since I departed from Congress. And I'm asking the people of the 2nd Congressional District, with lessons learned, to give me the opportunity to finish what I began for them and turn the economy around.
While we're on the subject of the airport, I've been following that just in the recent years, so I know that you were instrumental in getting it started. Others have picked up the baton, so to speak, Robin Kelly and Will Davis and a lot of our leaders in the Southland. And the job creation is one of the big selling points. It's a big economic boost. But I did want to see what your thoughts are about an impending disruption to the job field across the country and the world. I have a couple quotes I want to share with you real quick and see what your reaction is and how this may affect those plans for the airport and other economic development efforts. The founders of an AI company called Mechanize, in their introduction of their mission, say there are many who believe, or at least hope, that we can seize the benefits of AI without making human labor obsolete. These hopes are unfortunately mistaken. In the long run, AIs that fully substitute for human labor will likely be far more competitive, making their creation inevitable. And the hosts of the Hard Fork podcast in September 2025 observed that the interstate system built over 36 years cost $300 billion adjusted for inflation, so that's today's dollars. And they said that the CEO of chipmaker NVIDIA said US companies would spend $600 billion in 1 year. So the investment in AI is unprecedented, basically, in our economic history. And so that does suggest a certain inevitability in a capitalist system. How do you think Congress can be part of that transformation and protect the people that you serve?
I wrote an op-ed for The Root, which will be coming out next week. I also wrote a letter to the editor for Indigo magazine on AI as well. I believe in responsible AI. Yeah. I am a caregiver for my father, and there are responsible applications of AI that can make caregiving for the nearly 63 million Americans who are providing care for a loved one. It could help lift the load and the pressure off of the ways in which caregiving is devised and the way in which it is being practiced. Completely outside of the healthcare debate. Somewhere between $550 billion and $600 billion a year is not even part of the healthcare conversation because we care for our parents, we care for our sick children, we care for our loved ones, and it's not even calculated, for example, in the Affordable Care Act or any other health considerations that the Congress of the United States has addressed. So bringing $600 billion of activity into the AI economy to lift the burden off of people whose lives and trajectories and careers are changed as a result of a family member who's fallen sick is something we ought to give some consideration to. That would, from my perspective, be considered a responsible use of AI. But there will be no substitute for transcontinental travel. Drones just simply can't reach that far. Crossing the Atlantic, crossing the Pacific, requires one 10,000-foot Code F runway, and it needs to be built on the 4,000 acres that I've worked with 4 different governors, and God willing, a 5th governor, to allow us to begin the construction of. The airport will also take into consideration drone technology. Our school systems need it. Our property taxes need it. The fact that our children are raised in the South Suburbs, raised here in Homewood and Flossmoor, and they don't move back after college. The fact that they only come visit us as elderly parents because there's no hope, no job growth for a middle class in these communities that is consistent and commensurate with the education that they've received is a crisis of economic proportions. We've always been experiencing a depression on the south side of Chicago and the South Suburbs. It has to be anchored with the existing service-based economy. And with that comes Hyatt, Hilton, Fairmont, convention centers. With that comes amusement parks. With that comes an entire middle-class economy, law firms and accounting firms, locating not very far from global enterprises, just like they occur in the north side of Chicago and northwest suburbs.
So the getting more specifically to the congressional role in that, I mean, the Trump administration has tried to forbid states from regulating AI. Do you think Congress has a role in guiding that transformation to AI's capabilities?
I don't know how the president thinks he can do that. The 10th Amendment is going to allow states to pursue appropriate regulation within respects of their jurisdictions.
Tried.
But I'm not going to downplay the significance of building an interstate highway system from Maine to California, of having the same gauge of track from Maine to California, of having red, yellow, and green stop and go lights on every corner where local municipalities judge where they belong. So there is a role for the federal government in ensuring that everything isn't in Silicon Valley, that everything isn't in affluent communities, that communities that are historically left behind can leverage the fact that they are not growing to demand that AI considers investing in our communities is a factor in going forward. Now, I start out on day one with that cachet in Congress. It may take 10 years. It may take 20 years for someone to be able to develop the reputation in Congress to be able to lean on an AI company to locate in the 2nd Congressional District. That's not my problem on day one. And so, again, lessons learned from the mistakes of the past. But for such a time as this, the existential threat that Donald Trump represents, the reality of the lack of growth and jobs in our district. I've been gone for 13 years. Whose job was it to stay on track for the last 13 years? It wasn't mine. I've been drafted into this to provide leadership. And I hope that the candidates in this race are learning something from the way in which I'm conducting myself so that they can understand what the real role of a congressman is. It isn't just going to Washington and voting yes, no, present, and coming back and having a press conference. It is 24 hours, round-the-clock meetings. The mayor of Harvey, for example, died today. Died this morning. An insolvent town. Now that city has to have an election for a mayor, hopefully a candidate that will run with an economic direction for that village. I was engaged in those communities. I was also engaged in the diversity of our communities. I fought the Shaw brothers to keep them from trying to get rid of Don DeGraff. I fought others to keep Mayor Rich Hofield in Homewood because diversity matters to us. Some said it's our time. Our communities are increasingly becoming African American. It's all of our time, and we must grow together. We must ultimately move not only in the northern part of our district, but in the southern part of the district, from racial battleground, I propose economic common ground, and onto moral higher ground, where we celebrate and we live together and we grow together and we prosper together. And when our children graduate from high school here, they return to our communities to go to work and not just visit aging old grand folks like I'm going to be one day.
I already am.
Eric, you look great.
Yeah, I think that message probably resonates. The living together and working together. This is something I think about a lot, which is because we're a diverse community and we are still living within a framework that was, our national framework was developed in a caste system, to use Isabel Wilkerson's term, or she's written about it anyway. And that is still a force in our society, even though we make incremental changes at times and then backslide as we are currently in Washington. That's a huge problem, like restructuring your whole society to celebrate our diversity and use it. Do you have ideas? I mean, people talk about this for hundreds of years, actually. What's your take on how we really make progress in achieving that diverse dream?
Well, let me talk about it specifically in the 2nd Congressional District. This district is a product of the 1965 Voting Rights Act.
Mm-hmm.
This is a minority congressional district that when I represented it, it stopped at Southern Cook County.
Mm-hmm.
And now it goes almost to Champaign-Urbana.
Mm-hmm.
So I spend a considerable amount of time in rural America, in Danville, in Westville, in Tilton, in Joliet, in Pontiac, meeting with constituents who might feel some kind of way about Jesse Jackson Jr., and they might even feel some kind of way about, if you will, Chicago representation representing their interests. We have counties in our district that actually voted to join Indiana. Yeah. Many of them said they've never seen the congressman from the 2nd Congressional District. So some of it, Eric, is a factor of courage, a willingness to reach out across the lines and meet with other people.
Yeah.
How did we get the airport plans that everyone's been following for the last 13 years? I met with Henry Hyde, and Henry Hyde shared with me municipalities in the northwest suburbs who said, we are growing so fast, we can't even maintain the growth. They paid $2.5 million for our communities to develop plans of a self-financing public-private partnership to build a runway without any support of taxpayers, other than the investment that our communities forewent to allow the state to purchase the 4,000 acres to build our 10,000-foot runway. We still owe those communities $2.5 million. It is those plans that we submitted to the state. Then the state issued and created a public-private partnership legislation for the purposes of building an airport. They're following our plan that we submitted to them confidentially.
Slowly but surely. Right?
Slowly but surely, but now we are there. We have a governor who wants to be president of the United States. We have a governor who needs job growth and job creation. Not only in the state of Illinois, given the location of the airport, we can transform the western side of the state of Indiana and turn Indiana blue with a growth project in Illinois on the eastern side of our state. So I've given consideration to that, and I believe we can move from racial battleground, discussing us up north and them down south, by talking about a quality of life and a future for all of our children, regardless of our race, sex, or class, or caste, as Isabel Wilkerson would talk about.
Okay, well that would be a good way to accomplish it if you can. And the if you can is another thing I wanted to turn to real quick, because the Congress of your first tenure was, as always, sometimes contentious. You had battles with between Democrats and between Democrats and Republicans, but that situation has intensified recently, and you've alluded to Donald Trump and the Trump administration a couple of times, and they have really changed the game significantly, I think. I mean, I made just a quick list of ways in which Trump has diminished congressional authority or ignored it or tried to weaken it, you know, defying House subpoenas, DOGE, the project led by Elon Musk, hobbled federal programs and departments that were set up by Congress. Military action has been taken without congressional consultation. He's credited with helping to thwart bipartisan immigration reform before he was even elected. And the grants and things that were supposed to come to our communities have been frozen that were approved by Congress. So this situation is really more of a battle than just typical political contention. And I wonder, how do you think you can, what are your thoughts about strategy and tactics for making a difference under those conditions?
So I'll come to strategy and tactics in just a moment based on my experience.
Okay.
First of all, I came to Congress in 1995 in the second most contentious period in the history of Congress, maybe the third. I say if the first is the Civil War, and right behind the Civil War has to be this MAGA movement, then it has to be Newt Gingrich's contract with America. That's when I was elected to Congress. So I came into the House of Representatives in a Congress where you almost couldn't get anything done. And yet I reached out across the aisle. I found commonality. People who might have felt some kind of way about Jesse Jackson Jr. had no problem when they got to know me. We named the visitor center in the capital of the United States Emancipation Hall. What are the chances I could get that done during that period? We worked with Henry Hyde to get funding for the inaugural project for the airport. What are the chances that we could get that done? What are the chances that I could put language in an interior appropriations bill that says that the National Park Service has done a fairly good job of describing the activity at every Civil War battle site in the nation on what the Union did and what the Confederates did, but it's left out the conversation of why they're fighting in the first place. So I'd like to see language in the appropriations bill that acknowledges the role that slavery has played in the creation of the conflict in the first place. What's happening today, Eric? The President of the United States is ordering down, taking every single thing that my legislation created at George Washington's house, in Gettysburg, at battle sites around the country. They're tearing up the story that my legislation created. That's my work. Objectively, Newt Gingrich came to me after I inserted the language in the appropriations bill. He said, I've been getting calls about this language that you put in the appropriations bill. How did that get by me? Because it wasn't a bill. It was report language. And the Secretary of the Interior had to respond to the report language, did a further report, and changed the dynamic. So I worked with Democrats and Republicans to get things done. Some of that work now, right before our eyes, is being unraveled. Let me remind you of this, and maybe the listeners of Homewood and Flossmoor and those who will be within the sounds of our voice. I met Shirley Chisholm when I was 7 years old in 1972. When I was living in Washington, D.C., I lived next door on O Street to Rosa Parks. I had known Rosa Parks all of my life at the hour of her death. I was born March 11th, 1965. She worked as a staff member for Congressman John Conyers, whom I've known and knew, who's now deceased, all of my life. I know Barbara Lee, Maxine Waters, Sheila Jackson Lee. I've been in the Congress of the United States with some of the most fierce progressive fighters in Congress. And it's hard to imagine that there could be someone more fierce, like a Jasmine Crockett. For such a time as this, given the MAGA crowd, given Donald Trump's lack of concern for constitutional norms, our constituents have to look objectively at the candidates and ask themselves the question, who is prepared to fight for us on day one in the district? And secondly, who's prepared to bring it to Donald Trump without fear? At the hour of this interview, Don Lemon has been arrested, which means you could be arrested, Eric. And the question is, who do you pick up the phone and call to from this district and say, will someone come and get me out of jail because I've been engaged in First Amendment activity? You want Jesse Jackson Jr. to come, or do you want any of the other candidates to come? Or will they even return your call and be as responsive as I will be? When I leave this meeting, I go to do a release right now for Don Lemon, because Don Lemon is my friend, and because I believe in the First Amendment to the Constitution. I campaigned in 9 states for Kamala Harris. To your question, what if Democrats don't regain control of Congress? That's a different posture for the congressman. If they do regain control of Congress, I'm the most senior member in the state of Illinois, and amongst new members of Congress, Bobby Rush referred to me as a super freshman, able to make decisions, assume committee assignments, and maybe even be very close to the Democratic Speaker of the House himself. I will have served more years in Congress than Hakeem Jeffries if elected to Congress. That's not something to be taken lightly. And the district, our way of life, building upon the commonality that people can live together and work together, I put my record against anyone in this district that's running. That no one has worked harder, sacrificed harder, spoken at just about every high school graduation, an elementary school graduation in the district harder, preached more funerals, tried to inspire people, and even bring people back into the democratic process than me. I'd like to continue that work for such a time as this.
Well, this is a time. It will be a challenge for whoever is in Congress, in majority or minority, to reassert Congress's co-equal powers in our government. I think that's going to be one of the first challenges. In order to be effective, you first have to be able to exercise your authority as Congresspeople.
Absolutely, and as you know, even in a bipartisan way, my experience and strength was really in the healthcare space. I mean, I helped lead the Affordable Care Act. I was in the chair for 5 of the 8 hours of the national debate, moving and ushering that legislation through. I've got a plan to evolve the Affordable Care Act and shift the nation's discussion from it being Obamacare to affordable care for every American, which is what it was intended to be. How do we evolve it? We now get it to cover, which you and I need more than most, vision, dental, hearing. When we bring 10 to 20 million more people into the Affordable Care Act and coverage, the program becomes even more popular and less likely that it can be undermined by Democrats or Republicans. I was there when we created the legislation. I know how to evolve the legislation to cover more Americans, and that's the key to the popularity of the program. And mental health.
Yeah, that's another big one,
especially
right?
mental health.
Yeah, and the other question, those are all needs that a lot of Americans are asking for and want to see fulfilled. The part of the problem and the challenge is shifting the financial support for those kinds of programs. The Trump administration is just last year put trillions of dollars worth of tax credits and benefits into the hands of the wealthy and cut the social programs that many people depend on.
So,
how do you fix that?
So there's that fight in the Congress, right? I mean, the priorities, the nation's priorities, right? But there's also the fight, and I don't want to get past it too quickly, the fight for the middle class here in our own district, right? How much more can middle class families, what remains of the middle class in our district, actually take from property taxes at the county level, from school funding, at the school board level? How much more can we take for what we're getting in return for what we invest? I say that to say the Affordable Care Act presupposes that you have a job. And with tax credits, at the end of your job, you still cannot afford to pay for health care. Hence, the subsidies associated with the ACA. But what if we create 15,000 new jobs in the 2nd Congressional District? Now more people qualify for more benefits from the Affordable Care Act. That has nothing to do with Donald Trump. That has nothing to do. That's our desire and will within the 2nd Congressional District and within the Democratic Party. And that's a fight, as I engaged it with Mayor Daley in Chicago at the time. That's a fight with Rahm Emanuel, who thumbed their nose at everything south of the Museum of Science and Industry. And I thumbed my nose right back at them. I made it to the Appropriations Committee, And I funded every program, not out of favoritism, but every single request that came to our office from more than a dozen, maybe 24 mayors, we honored them. We changed zip codes for people who didn't want to be with this community because this community might not be able to afford what we afford with our expensive. We did it all for the people of the 2nd Congressional District. We will start that work on day one. There's no learning curve here. And so if you think we can wait 10 years for someone to figure out how to find the restroom on Capitol Hill, if we've got 10 years left in the democracy, but we can go deeper. In 2001, when I wrote my book, A More Perfect Union, Advancing New American Rights, I said that the Bill of Rights doesn't go far enough in terms of education, health care, housing, the environment. I don't need democratic socialism. I need the constitutional right to a public education of equal high quality. And that right is for my constituents to be able to go to the Illinois legislature and say, when everything is on the north side and we have nothing on the south side, we have a constitutional right to a treatment that says, build for us what you built for them. That's fair. And that's healthcare facilities, that's hospitals, that's level 1 trauma, that's Hyatt, Hilton, Fairmont, everything downtown Chicago has, we could have on the south side of Chicago if we were treated equally and fairly.
So
I'd like
you
to lead that fight.
put that under the 14th Amendment, or do you need new language to make that happen?
If the 14th Amendment could have delivered it by now, it would have. So the 14th Amendment is incapable of delivering for us.
Okay.
It respects our citizenship rights as human beings to some degree. It too is under attack at this hour. We need more specific citizenship rights added to the Constitution of the United States so that more people can restore their faith in the Constitution. I've got to be able to go to the Constitution and get health care, not just a gun. I've got to be able to go to the Constitution and get a clean, safe, and sustainable environment and not more ICE policing.
We haven't
when
even
the federal authority drops.
We haven't even gone there yet.
Troops into our community. And I would oppose, obviously, that behavior. And I would hold ICE agents accountable as the congressman of the 2nd Congressional District. And I would do it on day one.
Okay. Yeah, our current 2nd District Representative Robin Kelly has led the effort to impeach the current director of DHS, which is over ICE and the Border Patrol. Is that approach something that you would be on board with if you were in Congress again?
Well, if I were the congressman of the 2nd Congressional District, it wouldn't be called the Robin Kelly impeachment legislation. It'd be called the Jesse Jackson Jr. impeachment legislation. The point is,
You're
it
on
would
board.
come from the 2nd Congressional District.
Yeah.
Oh, there's no doubt about that.
Okay.
But the obvious challenge is we need control of the Congress to even advance these ideas. Because Donald Trump has such a hold on the MAGA interests in the Congress. If, in fact, we are successful, I will have seniority. If we're not successful, there's a strong likelihood that I will be in demand to travel around districts around the country, including our own, registering voters, inspiring people, and preparing them for 2028, when we will get another shot at regaining control of the Congress. That, too, will be part of my job. And it does come at the expense of family. It comes at the expense of energy. And it comes at the expense of a constituency that understands exactly why they are sending someone to Congress at this hour. Now, in another period and in another time, you might choose another candidate for Congress. I could understand that. But for this time, if you want someone to fight for you, who has delivered for you, who knows what the problems are in the district, I just ask the people to give me a chance.
Okay. Well, thank you very much,
Eric, it's good to see you.
Congressman, and we appreciate the conversation, and good luck on the campaign trail.
Keep us in your prayers.
Okay, thank you.